Okay, so here to talk about Miami University and kind of what metrics we use and how we use them and in what context, and hopefully give some interesting examples of what that really looks like. For those that don't know, just to step back a second, the ITSM CG within EDUCAUSE has been trying to have a panel series around metrics and dashboards and stuff like that. So our real goal of this is multifold. One, just to share and create opportunities like this to gather and talk about metrics and something that gets all of our blood boiling. And two, to try to use the transcripts of these conversations to write some white papers that might help people down the road not have to listen to 7 hours of video and be able to instead, read a nice, concise summary of what we ended up with. So we're capturing everything via transcript and, expect those somewhere down the road. What we envision putting together in the end is something that helps people be able to identify that this kind of stuff is a journey, and that you're going to hit different roadblocks along the way. And I'll be talking about some of those roadblocks that we hit here at Miami University, and we're trying to start formulate what those common roadblocks are and some strategies and approaches for how you might overcome them. And then the last thing on this real quick, just know that, our timeline has adjusted for anybody that goes back and watches a recording. We stalled a little bit trying to get our individual metrics journeys going. I think this is the first one that is kicking off in this second segment. We did do 3 different panel discussions, and those recordings are out on the ITSM wiki. And now we're trying to get our individual panelists to come around and show off specific tools and specific use cases within their environment. We also have planned some panel discussions around certain ITSM practices. I know one is being lined up to talk about like release management and project management and kind of that transition to production. We'll also try to do some around specific, service desk, other things like that. Hope to do some around specific IT services that are common to us all, and then TBD on the executive metrics, but more to come. This is just one piece of a longer series that we're hoping to bring to everyone. In terms of today, what I hope to share, and I have a lot, and I can get pretty distracted by some of the stuff that gets me excited. So I'll try not to dwell too long and make sure I make it through a lot of different examples, but really brief how we approach metrics here at Miami. I'm going to give a bunch of examples, and I'm actually going to go into the tools, and you're going to see, sometimes it's slides, sometimes it's Tableau, or other things like that. And kind of some of the metrics that we look at. So along operational lines, tactical lines, and a little bit on the strategy. We don't do much there, but I will share kind of the one thing I think is relevant. So with that, I'm going to kind of get into it. So in terms of how Miami has been approaching this over many years now, I think this diagram appeared in an early ITIL book, and it really resonated with us in terms of trying to figure out, how to think about our metrics from the perspective of at the very bottom, we have those operating metrics. Oops, sorry. Forgot there was animation on that slide. Operating metrics that are really, about the transactional level, right? Things that are happening, whether those are in our IT systems or our people, but they're transactions. And so rolling those up and thinking about them across 2 different ways, thinking about them across our services and thinking about them in terms of our practices. And we consider that to be that tactical level where we're looking at, aggregating some of those metrics into something a little bit more higher level. And then ultimately being able to point those things at this university strategy and at the kind of, mission and business critical things that the institution goals that they're trying to achieve. That part is super hard. At least we found it to be super hard. So a lot of our emphasis tends to be in this operational and tactical level. The other kind of thing just to put out there is when we talk about this, we think about how we have that base of this pyramid being, something happens, that's the transaction. When it happens, wherever we capture that, and those transactions produce data, and those data can be, used in formulating calculations or something that we would call more of a metric. And those metrics then can help us understand performance in some way, shape, or form. And so those are the KPIs that we try to really pay attention to that help us understand what is happening, whether it be a service or a practice or something that we care about. and in those metrics, we have tried to think about them along these 4 dimensions. And I put this up here because for us, it is about trying to make sure we're always measuring something in each of these buckets. We don't ever just want to be measuring one thing. Like when we really look at something, especially at the tactical strategic level, we can't just talk about quality unless we're going to talk about performance, compliance, value, right? We can't just talk about value unless we're going to talk about compliance, performance, and quality. So thinking about these, that you need some measure of all of these things if you're ever going to talk about something holistically. And so, we try to always make sure we're doing something in each of these, at least at the tactical and strategic level. All right, so with that, let's get into some examples. And I probably should mention as I look at this slide, these are all pictures of our beautiful campus here in Oxford, Ohio. So this one on our Western campus. So just thought as part of our journey, I'll give you a little bit of a tour as we go. Okay. So first thing in operational is I just wanted to kind of dig in quickly and get into just some of the desktops that we use within our service management tool, which is Team Dynamics. And I'm just going to pick a couple of examples so that you guys see what that looks like within our ITSM platform for a lot of our teams. Highly customizable. All of our teams do something different. Oops, I need to. The reason I made these slides, by the way, is so that I remember what I want to share, less for you guys. So, just some examples. So like, one of the things that we recommend all of our managers do is just have some simple metrics that they can pull up about their staff. So when I meet with my staff one-on-one and I do the one-on-ones, I just have some simple things. And a lot of times these are lists. So thanks, Pete, for letting me showcase him. Pete doesn't do a lot of ticket work, but I can see the tickets that he's worked and, how long it's taken him and those kinds of things. And the cards. So we use a card wall for kind of the bigger projects, which is where obviously Pete spends most of his time, compared to another one of my employees. Chuck tends to do a little bit more ticket work and so forth. And so, if I've got somebody that's super operational, then they're going to have even more of that ticket stuff. So giving people a place to kind of go, okay, here's the type of work that this person's doing, and here's how long it's taking them, to cycle through some of that work, and here's what's on their plate, and trying to standardize across that a little bit. Let's see, what was the next one I wanted to show? I'll just show you my teams dashboard. So we have a couple different ones of these. It's kind of funny. Oops. Get the right one. This is the one I use most often, which, again, a lot of times is just giving me high level stuff about various data of people that I care about. I have basically a queue it's we call it the 1.5 because we outsourced our service desk, but this is like stuff that we really care about that's kind of sitting with the service desk, and we're trying to be able to highlight where some of that stuff is, or service desk oriented work that we're paying close attention to. We get a lot of stuff around, we call it traffic control. That's one of our big functions, is we basically just help get things that can't figure out how to get where they need to go to the right runway. And so, we try to make sure we're watching how much of that is going on. And then we get into the typical stuff like, here's how many unassigned. So for us, what this means is we have something in our queue and it's still sitting there and nobody has said got it. And so, we've got a few things that have been sitting there for 3 days and don't have a got it. We track some bugs using some tags, and then we get into some of this just, operational stuff like, all right, we've got of tickets that somebody does have a got it. We've got 4 and they're average age of 15 days old. I like looking at thresholds. So things that are older than a week. Poor Pete's got this ticket that has been sitting out there for a long time. And then also we do currency reviews on our knowledge base. So kind of where are all of those things? And you can see we have some stuff that struggled, but for the most part, we're talking single digits here in terms of KB articles that somebody needs to put eyeballs on that have expired and those kinds of things. So, very operational. That's a little different. I wanted to show you another different example of another team. This is one of our desktop support teams, and a pretty standard desktop that we ship to all of our solver teams that basically goes through and gives them some monthly metrics and then some last 2 weeks. So we're always trying to give everyone perspective. What does your world look like over the last year? What does it look like recently? So we grab survey comments that were related to tickets that they handled. We grab, what was the source of this work? What was the services it was related to? Show that in a variety of different ways. Any tags that were on the tickets that have trends, resolve times, locations. That's a little harder for some than others. Some of the teams, only support a few places. So this graph makes more sense when you maybe only have 5 versus this team that has many, many obvious locations that they get dispatched to, and so forth. So again, just example of another very operational, like this is meant to be in the day, right? This is something that that team and that team's manager should be pulling up on a daily basis to really get a sense of how are things going right now, a little bit of sense of how they've been going to give me context, right? And let's see, did I have any others? Yeah, one other that I thought I would, two others that I thought I would show. Then we'll move on. Is my management team uses one that just has a couple different things that I think are interesting. Very list heavy here, but basically showing that we've got some tickets that are on hold and, trying to pay attention to those because they should come off hold someday. And when is that going to be? We basically parked them. And then we have a desire for everybody to, take responsibility for a ticket. And you can see that there's a small number, 17 tickets that for whatever reason, a team has been assigned and they haven't done a got it. So we, continue to try to push for that to happen. We have what we call stale tickets. So these are tickets that don't look like they're getting worked and we're trying to get eyeballs on them. Not to call out our 4 friends over in technology support services, but you can see, they're the team that has struggled with this the most. 99.99% of the time, these tickets have been dealt with. People just haven't caught up with the paperwork, right? And we're really trying to push that to happen by exposing it. And one of the lessons we've learned here is don't be afraid of that, So here I am on the internet sharing some of our dirty laundry. And that's because we can't be afraid of that dirty laundry if we want to make it clean. And so, one of the best ways we found to try to advance that is to expose that data and give people opportunity to make it better. And the last operational thing, direct in team dynamics that I was going to share is very different. And this is new for us as we have been trying to dig into our fleet of computers. So we have not done asset management in any meaningful way ever. And so recently turning some attention to that. And so we built a dashboard to help start quantifying some of the data that's in there. A lot of this is we're just trying to drive data compliance because we have a real mess. And so, we have a lot of things like we've started tracking a use case, what is this thing used for? And you can see 98% of the devices don't have anything specified. We know that that's something we need to fix. And so we're just trying to drive that slice of the pie, down closer to 0 week in, week out, month to month. We've not traditionally gathered purchase order information. So again, we know that we don't have it. We're just trying to push towards getting that 95 down to 0. And it just gives us a nice quick way to see it, a lot of different information about the assets in terms of, are they checking into our management systems or are they managed in a manual way? Whose is it? Who's responsible for supporting it? Has anyone audited that in a while? How old are they? And I think that's about all there is on there at the moment. So we divide our assets into different forms. What forms, are they in a classroom? Are they in a lab? What kind of function does this stuff serve? Okay, so that's some of the operational kind of stuff that we are looking at. The other thing operational before I move into the tactical that I wanted to share is we make a lot of use of what I call watch reports or audit reports. This is going to be a dangerous moment, but I'm going to pull up my mail. Pull up some automated report. And mostly these come emailed to various people. I get a lot of them. And really, they're just ways for me to kind of watch things that I am curious about taking a look at. So some of this stuff is very much administrative overhead on our end. So like this one is a good example where we have users in our ITSM system that don't have a primary group. That shouldn't happen. Let's go fix those users. But other of these are more service oriented. So we have things like how many customer dissatisfaction surveys did we get? And we get a report of that every day. Tickets where we referred somebody over to another office. So basically, I hate these. This is a call center saying, we can't help you. You got to talk to another call center. Hate that interaction. And so we've been spying on it and trying to see what we can do to fix it. You'll also notice in my list here, for me, we also do a lot of enterprise service management. So when we launch new groups into our ESM segments, I often have watch reports that help me watch their stuff. And so, because they're kind of new to service management. And so a lot of aging tickets and those kinds of things that I can reach out to those folks and say, hey, did you know that you had some stuff that's starting to look a little bit sketchy over there, and get their eyeballs on it, things like that. So, dozens and dozens, obviously, of examples. I get a lot of this mail every day, and it's a quick read. It's 30 minutes of my day to kind of go through and get a general sense of what's going on in that ecosystem. So for me, on the operational front, it's worth it. Okay, so I think that's all I have to show on the operational side. I did want to mention, and this slide's in gray because I don't want to spend time on it here, but we also do some sampling and some quality control. We stopped doing it recently, but we have for many years done quality control on our service desk tickets. So we basically take a random sample, we run them through some rubrics to evaluate them. Things like, does it have a good title? Was it correctly classified? Did it get escalated to the right team if it needed escalated? We ask like a bunch of questions and we evaluate and score those. And so, and then we can aggregate that data as well. I guess just to show you, and again, I could get lost talking about this for an hour, but here's kind of a, when we were doing it, view in Tableau of aggregating all of that data. So taking all of those different criterias and scoring them and then normalizing that on a 100-point scale. And so the orange and yellow here are kind of problem areas. And, we basically use it to help us know where we can make improvements. And I have individual, graphs around specific criteria and stuff like that so that we can basically work towards continuous improvement. And so we use our random sampling data to help us do that. Okay. So now definitely switching us into tactical mode. Now we'll pause, I guess, and give Chris a chance to interject if or any of my co-host helpers, any questions that I've missed on the operations side that I ought to tackle.
No, you're good so far. Unless somebody wants to interject right now.
Yeah, no questions, just an apparent appreciation for you being willing to air your dirty laundry and show others that they're not the only ones with a large hamper. So
Yep, absolutely. I have no problem. So let's talk some tactical stuff here. So the first kind of set of metrics that I want to talk about is just our annual ITSM practice review. So our team sits down once a year at the beginning of the year and basically does a fairly substantive time block, 2.5, 3 hours of looking at each of our practices. We try to time block ourselves, or else we could, again, spend forever trying to chase down all the, spaghetti string stuff. And so these are the ones that we evaluate each year. And I will kind of show off the document that results from that. We call it our ITSM roadmap. And it's broken up, basically with a chapter. We have an executive summary that I'll skip over. And then we have a chapter for the various practices that we dive into and do some more detailed analysis. So I don't know, I'll jump down to one of these as an example, just a couple examples. So this is our service level management chapter. And each of these is structured in the same way. And I think it's important. I know we're here talking about metrics, but you always have to have context and you need to wrap your metrics in a story, in our opinion. And so this is kind of one of the ways that we do that. We try to write an overview. We tell people when we hand this document around, if you only have 15 minutes, just read all the overviews, like skip all the details, read the overviews. You're going to know how we're doing. If you've got more time, pay attention to the chapters that resonate with you the most, where you want to learn more. And if you have an ample amount of time, look at all the details. But a lot of this stuff is just helping us get to this overview. And for each of our practices, we have varying levels of performance indicators. Our less mature practices tend to have less mature metrics to measure them. And oftentimes is just very much about counting things. So our service level management practice is very new. Basically, we get people in a room and we do some service reviews, and that's the extent of it today. And so largely we're tracking how often are those happening. Out of our service catalog, we've now managed to do in 2022, 16 of our 58 services in our service catalog. We consider that a big improvement from 2019 when we did 1 and started this process, right? So where do we have documented improvement plans? How many people are showing up to these and participating? We do an annual end of year survey about our service management practices, where we ask about each of the practices. And so the question on that survey related to this one is, I find the service reviews I have attended valuable. And, we ask people for some feedback on that. And obviously some more detailed stuff in the survey that we can dig into and try to understand what we can do better. Pretty high level stuff. And then just in terms of what else is in here, we also try to basically say, okay, what did we learn from those KPIs, and get that down in narrative format. We try to highlight anything we recently did that we felt like was an accomplishment. And then we assemble what I consider to be our current state, target state, and what high priority improvements are we trying to get done in the near future. These are all unresourced commitments, so we can't make promises. We can't do anything. These are unresourced kind of desires, and so we like to capture them, but without any formal resourcing, we don't promise to get them done.
Hey, Bob, if you want to just hold there for a second.
Yeah.
Chris Bard asked, is the yearly review, is it just the all of the IT department or just your teams?
It is the practice owner and whoever they kind of choose to invite. So sometimes we have some practices that we definitely want opinions of others. It is not a division-wide thing. We do share the outputs of this. This document gets shared across all of IT, and people are asked to comment and give us any feedback or things we missed and that kind of thing. But the work itself is done by basically our ITSM practice owners, which is mostly in my team. There are some practice owners. I guess here, I'll answer the question a little bit this way. There's a slide that we put in here on who our practice owners are for each of these practices. So most of these folks are on my team, but there are our knowledge management and project management related practices actually sit elsewhere. So they get pulled in when we do this annual review. Go ahead. Yeah. More questions?
No, I just said thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it might be good to see like one other example of this. I mean, again, I think I could spend the whole time just talking about this, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. There's a lot, but we have a little bit more mature metrics, say, in our service desk. So I'll jump down to that one because I know, well, actually I won't. I said I'm going to save the service desk stuff for a different time. Let's look at our service configuration management. Not as mature, but just to give you a sense of, what some of that looks like again. So just the overview. This is very much Miami University's counting exercise. Can we count things is what our service asset and configuration management practice is all about, right? And so we actually break it out and trying to count things. So how many applications can we count? How many, we call them collections, can we count, which are like, I don't know, related IT components, databases, specific end user devices, facilities that are IT facilities, credit-bearing learning spaces, that's our word for classrooms, networking stuff, servers, and service offerings. And so it's really very much an exercise in counting things, but we also look at a lot of compliance stuff here too. So we are trying to look at, let me come back up to something that might be useful, like our applications. How much of the information in our CMDB is what this automated means? So are we getting data feeds from somewhere else? The answer here is no, we're not. How many different owners do we have? How many different groups are those owners a part of? Do we have relationships between those applications and an IT service? Do we have relationships between anything? Are they correctly using some of the features in team dynamics for us? And how many had a review date, right? So all things that we're trying to kind of just improve and drive up. So it's our way of looking at where are we, and we pick some of these and try to apply some pressure and some energies to make it better in the future. I don't know if there'll be a lot of things to take credit for here yet, but like our end user devices, I lost them. Here we go. Yeah, so you can see on the end user device front, we've made a lot of progress. We put a lot of energy here between 2020 and now in terms of like getting data automated from MECM and Jamf as our environment into our CMDB. And so it's not as manual as it used to be. And that's an area that we consider to be making a lot of progress, but you can see most of the stuff isn't related to anything. So we don't know what services are being driven by that and so forth. Okay, so that is our ITSM roadmap. And again, we have many of these different chapters. And if there is specific interest in seeing details on any of those, maybe leave a comment in the chat. And that'll be something that we consider, doing a future deeper dive or something into if there's interest. So
we do have another question.
Yeah.
Vernon is asking how many of the counts are generated directly from Team Dynamics.
How many of the, I missed of the what?
The counts on your slides there.
All of them. So all of them are in our, as far as those assets were concerned, we have a centralized CMDB in Team Dynamics. And that is where we are counting from, because that's where we care about. For those that do configuration management, we know that there are source systems that have better data, and our kind of balancing act that we walk is that we just want to know the high level information in our CMDB, and then we want to be able to point to the source system to go get the details. And that's generally how we are approaching that. But when we are counting, we're like, it should be represented in this single pane. We're very big on the single pane, knowing that you might, branch off to get relevant details back to a source system. Excellent question, Bernard. Thanks.
So would you say that's more than like asset tracking than actual configuration item tracking, or?
It's a combination. Like we actually track cloud applications in there in our application portfolio. So I don't know. It depends on how you define asset. It's definitely not all capitalized stuff. Anything like that. Yep. It's not all physical.
It's truly CIs then, like
yep.
configurations or
yep.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yep. It's both.
Wow.
So, yeah. Great question, Mark. Thanks. Awesome. So next one that I wanted to dig into is, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this either, because I think we're going to do service specific types of session. So I'll just pick one of these. I think I will pick our enterprise service management and kind of show this. So this is what one of our service reviews looks like. And again, there's more to this than just the data. So we actually walk through and we remind people what service level management is. And we have a bunch of things around our service definition, stakeholders. We've started creating journey maps, and we have personas and stuff like that we talk through before we even get to the data. And then when we get to the data, we try to, what data can we quickly collect that lets us understand the service? So enterprise service management, newer service for us. And we actually have some context data. So, we've been tracking how many different service management ticketing applications we've deployed, how many different front-end client portals there are supporting those, how many different users there are actively participating across all of those. If we can get some measure of participation, this broke for us for reasons I won't go into, and how many different total teams there are involved across that. And you can see the incremental growth that's been going on for us since 2019, and that continues. We look at then specifics around those client portals. So that's like the web front end where a lot of forms and stuff like that exists. and KB articles. So, how many forums do they have? How many KB articles do they have? What kind of activity are we seeing in them? So this is just a, month by month of the number of tickets so that we can, just because we stood it up, are they using it? What kind of volume are they putting through there as we review this service? And then we always dig in and look at some of the details around our service management related to this service. So for the service, that is enterprise service management, how is our service IT service management supporting it? Well, we had, a small number of incidents and service requests related. We're not using any structured request forms, really. Didn't have any major incidents. We did have some changes in 2021. Something happened in 2022 and we weren't logging changes. We need to fix that. No projects and no KB articles, and again, we apply the same model to all of our services and those types of things. So that's just an example. And I will dive into some of the service management metric stuff here in a minute in a little more detail, but just to give you a sense of one of our service reviews. Also gonna very quickly skim over the service desk performance review, but let folks know, and the data I'm about to show you, we do extensively in a variety of different ways. So when we, I do want to show part of this. I lied about skipping over it. When we talk about our service desk, we are largely referring to the service desk that we outsource to Anthology. And so twice a year, they actually come and present the data. We very much are partners with this, and we help author a portion of this, but it is very much there. Here's the value and the service we're providing for you. And they go through, a variety of things, all your typical service desk metrics around, handle times and, channel, are they meeting their SLAs? How often are they meeting? Because we actually have contracted agreements with them around speed to answer, stuff like that. How far are we running hot on our contract? We pay per transaction. Are we running light? We're going to have leftover at the end, and all that kind of stuff. So again, when we do a service desk version, I'll jump into this maybe in a little bit more detail, but I just wanted folks to kind of see that, since it's a unique thing, since we outsource our service desk, that we still care very much about the data, and they're still very engaged in helping us look at that data. And then the one that I wanted to show in Tableau and spend a little time on is we also annually look at the big picture. So our service desk doesn't process all tickets. There are ways for tickets to come into organization else in other ways, and they certainly don't resolve them all. Those tickets, even that the service desk does handle, some of them escape out into our IT ecosystem. And so we have a pretty extensive Tableau environment built out that we use a lot. So I'm going to give you a brief tour of some of this. Let's see if I go full screen. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. But, and so we try to look just simply, we have data going back, obviously, quite a time. So I started this in January of 2015 up through, I think, end of August here. In 2023, since we haven't finished yet. And, we can look at averages and we can look and see, we know where the peaks are, but, it's nice to be able to validate those peaks. 2019, a little interesting, different environment in terms of timing in 2020 with COVID, and we saw that in our data and those kinds of things. And so, we can look at the high picture, just big business. We then have a lot of ways that we can dig into this data. So this is it coming in through our outsourced service desk or not? So we started outsourcing in 2017. So you see a little bit of a mess of data here, but we got that data problem fixed. And so, now, we can see about half of our activity is coming through the service desk, and another half is coming in to support activity in some other way. Also interesting in our Tableau, we have a variety of ways that we can take any one of these charts and kind of look at it. So I could instead say, let's see those charts, but broken out by individual divisions. That's not going to make a whole lot of sense here because we'd probably need to look, it's just not a useful chart. College of Arts and Science is way bigger, but I can break it out by channel, and I can see, within the channel, do I have a difference? So I can see here, oops, I assume this is my phone channel, it's almost exclusively through IT help. My chat channel, I almost exclusively through our service desk. And so, that's how that work is arriving. I can break this out by affiliation. So I've got this errant Cincinnati State thing that won't go away. But are they alumni? Are they retirees? Are they faculty? Are they staff? Are they students? Right. So I can look at it that way. Can actually look at it in terms of which groups. So we group our solver teams. We're distributed IT. So we basically have our academic IT teams, our administrative IT teams, the service desk itself, our central IT teams, and a couple other stray groups that get a handful of tickets here and there. We can look at the same data based on service groupings. So we can go in and say, again, these are multiple services grouped together. So our accessibility services, our communication collaboration services, our computing and printing services, our identity access management services, which includes like our two-factor stuff like that. So we can, slice and dice any one of these charts I'm going to show you in any of these ways. Lesser used one is I also can look at cycle time. So sometimes we like to say, okay, in terms of how quickly tickets are happening, is there some correlation between that and whatever we've got on the main graph? So quick close for us is something that is handled, within basically 15-20 minutes. And then we've got 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, over 1 month, and those kind of things. So, and we can adjust our time scale. I should note when we do this, we often, we meet monthly to look at our service management data, and we pull this Tableau up, and then we compress this down to the last 6 weeks. So it's kind of like more of a recent time frame view. What I'm showing you here is a many year view of the data. And so we can adjust all of that. We can also make some adjustments in terms of what we're looking at. So sometimes, for example, when we look at the service desk data, we often say, let's look at this strictly from the perspective of faculty. And so we focus in solely on the faculty interactions and look at all this just from that perspective. Or let's focus solely on the staff experience. And so, this Tableau allows us to be able to kind of hone in where we need to hone into. Some of the other kind of metrics or measures that we are watching, just the general, did it come in through our help desk or not? Then here's kind of a channel version. You can see that the blue appears when we basically made a pretty fundamental shift. We introduced two-factor and we changed the way our main login screen works. And that drove a lot of traffic to chat. And so we see, chat has entered the game around this time frame. And I like normalizing this one. So these are, based on raw counts. I like normalizing this as a percentage, right? So basically any given month here rolled up and then as a percentage of that. So you see here in December of 2018 is when we first started rolling out that change to our authentication and introducing Duo, and all of a sudden chat got super popular. And we still get quite a bit through email, which I dislike, but that's the reality. Phone, web, which is basically like filling out some kind of web form. And then we do have some other sources, some automation, some other things that allow tickets to get in there, walk in, a variety of other things that we just lump under other today. So how?
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
A question on this. Actually, the question is from me.
Yeah.
So I see that your email number there is stubbornly high, and you said that, of course, that's frustrating. So when you introduced the chat, can you talk me through what the OCM and marketing was around the chat, and how, if at all, you tried to drive people out of email, or did you opt that there's certain types of customers that will never give up email and not to push too hard on that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's interesting if we look at this one by affiliation. Let me try to see if I can somewhat fix this chart. Yeah, you can see, I think, good enough who's chatting, students and unknown. Who's emailing? Email and faculty is, doing the email. Phone is largely students, and it definitely is affiliation driven from everything that we've seen. We do not promote our email address actively anymore, but faculty and staff have long memories.
Yeah.
Some of our solver teams do promote their email address. So again, our service desk is only about 50% of this overall volume. So like our farmer business school IT, they have an email address that they encourage their faculty to use. So that stuff is rolled up in under the email here as well.
Bob, can you contextualize other for folks?
Other includes like it's a combination of like walk-in. We call it like direct observation now, like somebody got bumped into in the hallway or they observed something was wrong and they fixed it. Those kinds of things. There are some automated stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mark.
So you can't be sure like whether they were faculty or staff or whatever because they were just someone who walked in or.
On the so sorry, on the other I wasn't following on the other like affiliation. Yeah, so that's parents.
Okay.
Like people that we don't know because they're not in our people system.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And also, sorry if I missed this, or this is for me. Did you say that? Are you using like iPass or something to get data into Tableau, or some kind of other data exchange, or is it manual? Like, how are you getting data from TDX to Tableau?
Yeah, today we have a series of Python scripts that talk to the Team Dynamics API, the data we want, and stick it into our data warehouse. We are shifting that to iPass actively, literally as we speak right now. One of my interns is slacking me over here on my other screen about some of the work they're doing. So we hope to be off that Python stuff soon.
Cool. For those of you in the audience that don't know what iPass is, if you're not on the TDX platform, iPass is like it's an integration platform as a service, and it's basically a sort of an adjunct tool provided by TDX to facilitate sort of data exchange and relatively code-free integrations between systems and TDX, or quite frankly between systems that don't include TDX.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's also the way, like back on the asset configuration item, it's the way that we're working towards getting our Mecum, Jamf, Crestron, like all those kinds of system data updated as well.
We're doing the same thing. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah, very good. So let me flip through a couple of these real quick, and then I think I need to move on to that strategic section here in just a second. But so
yeah, you got 15 minutes left.
Yep. Thanks, Chris. Yep. So I'll flip through a couple of these because there are some interesting ones. So like one of the things that we do is we try to look, I meant to hit top requesters. This isn't going to make a heck of a lot of sense across this time period. I probably should have thought about that. But, who has submitted a lot of tickets? When we look at this on, say, a 6-week horizon, is there somebody that's in a certain kind of pain point or making a lot of requests? Do we have an opportunity to educate or train? And so, looking at it by person at times. We do look at our prioritization. So we have a prioritization rubric where we have impact and urgency. You can see we have some data problems that really just go back to that old data. But for the most part, the vast majority across this huge time frame of all of our stuff is low urgency, small impact, right? It's not, these are not high P1, P2 type stuff. So, but being able to dice that up and understand where it sits. Incident versus service request across the time horizon. No surprise, we're consistent with typical industry, more service request oriented than incident oriented. Request models for us is kind of like, where do we actually have like a structured request? So we have some structured requests around phones and keys and requests for banner security and so forth. So these kind of defined request models that have defined SLAs and defined, work procedures to fulfill them. The all important customer satisfaction. So you can see our outsourcing of the service desk here that, brought us down a little bit. One of the interesting things here to talk about is that we have 2 forms of satisfaction surveys. When people call the service desk, they can do a survey like on the phone. like when you call your bank or whatever. And then we have an email survey that goes to every ticket as well that people can fill out. And so this aggregates the two together. And so that we're making sure that we're considering all the opinions. And, you know, we kind of look at that. Again, this is all related to support. A lot of different ways that we look at who is filling those surveys out. I think the way I want to show you most quickly is here, which is that you can see that one of the challenges with customer sat in our environment is the vast majority that are completing those surveys are faculty or staff, and not students. But if you go back all the way to the raw data and look at, you know, students do represent around 25%, 30% of all the volume. And so what this means is we always have to be cautious that faculty staff experiences are overrepresented in our survey data and student experiences are underrepresented. And I'm not saying that's positive or negative, just that that's a bias, that the data is biased towards faculty and staff, and we need to be aware of that.
I got another question for you, Bob.
Yeah.
Dana asks if you have a standard dashboard for the ESM folks, I assume Enterprise Service Management.
Yeah, we do. Yes. So we ship now part of as our ESM, kind of like a starting point dashboard that shows that same kind of last 2 weeks, last, you know, X months, which when they're first starting, there's nothing there. And kind of has the breakdowns by service and breakdowns by work type and all that as well. Yep. We do. Raw resolution rate is who's solving the tickets. And you can see our help desk, you know, is basically solving 50% or more of all tickets. And when you consider this is all tickets and not all of it flows through them, that's a pretty good job. In fact, you know, just to kind of highlight this, if I focus solely on things that are coming through our outsourced service desk, you'll see that they are largely speaking resolving somewhere in the 75 to 85% range. So we're getting a lot of value there. They're not escalating things. This is a Pareto chart that shows who's doing all the work of the support work. So, you know, there's our top teams, and we tend to look at this one a lot because we want to focus on the like any investment in things for these teams is going to make life a lot better for a lot of people. I do think I probably have this focused in maybe only on the last year. I don't know that this is showing the data from ever. And a similar chart on service drivers. So this is what's driving support. Anything we can do to deflect, you know, shift to self-service, make this less expensive, make the experience better is going to be better for people in the long run. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else in here. I think cycle time is worth looking at. You know, one of the things that I hate, people have seen me rail on it, is, you know, mean time to resolve. We do not work in a world of normal curves. This is our way of trying to solve for that and look at things more from a perspective of, you know, how fast are things getting completed week to week, month to month. One caution for people that go this route, you know, these time spans that we've chosen are not equal. So you got to be careful because, you know, there's a big difference between an hour in a day and a week and a month. Like there's a lot of hours in that delta. So, you know, the time scales are not the same and you got to be careful. I know I am pushing myself over time, but I want to share a couple of these things. So I'm willing to suffer here. We also look at what articles are being cited in tickets. So this can be helpful. For us, we separate things that are truly public facing, which means that they are really candidates for self-service. And there was, not say no reason, but the person got help using something that they could have followed on their own, versus things where we did need to have, you know, somebody involved in the process. Some experiments that we run, I guess I took it out, is we've been trying to get things on a map and understand location data a little better. And we actually have a version of this that I must have pulled out of this specific chart about actually like on a literal campus map, and tries to show size for the buildings where tickets are happening, where support work is happening. But okay, so like I said, I had a feeling that I had more content than I could cover in an hour. But that's a pretty deep dive into our Tableau. And really it's mostly support related activity. And we try to make it so that we can reuse that same Tableau in a lot of different contexts. So when I ship these slides out and you look through the slides, you'll notice that we reference using that Tableau. We just change the parameters quite a bit. We use it in our service reviews. We use it in our service desk reviews. We use it in our monthly service manager reviews. We use it in our annual practice reviews, etc. Just changing some of the parameters and therefore shifting the context. We also do, and I won't pull this one up, a very focused view of looking at basically 2 weeks before the start of class through Labor Day, and how did things go during this really important time, a lot of first impressions being made. And we actually do in that one some year by year comparisons. So how did it go this year compared to last year, compared to the year before, going back to around 2016. We have good comparison data on that. Okay, so I will be very brief about the strategic thing here, knowing that I am running out of time, but I did want to briefly share this. So one of the things that we're proud of that does help us get some strategic perspective is that we continue to run what used to be called TechQual or TechQual Plus, for those that are familiar. And it ran into some accessibility issues. And so we shifted to kind of running our own version of this. But the advantage of this is that we have longitudinal data that goes way back. So the brief way of thinking about TechQual is everybody is asked to answer 3 questions. And I'm trying to find if this says it on here. Yeah. What is your desired level of service? What is the minimum level of service that you would accept? And where do you think we are performing between those two, right? So we ask people to, put your bookends on here, and then where is our book compared to those 2 bookends? And then we're able to visually graph across these same questions that we've asked related to networking kinds of things, online collaboration types of things, specifics around classrooms, and then some support types and communication types of things. And we've been asking basically these same questions, I think, since 2011. So we have a lot of data, and we can slice and dice that in different ways. But just to show you like a longitudinal chart, I'm going to scroll way down here. Make this bigger. So, having an internet service that operates reliably. So the red dot is where we stand between those bookends. And so, back in 2011, we were at the at the very bottom of meeting those minimum expectations. And then we were falling short for some years, got back up to medium, and have largely been able to hit. We did have a little blip last year. Again, these are all user perceptions, and we're asking a random sample of faculty, staff, and students to help us gauge how well our services operate. And so again, these are not just like central IT, this is overall, and trying to gauge that value side of the equation. Are people happy with the performance of their services? So switch to like classrooms, if I can find that one. Online services that enhance the teaching and learning experience, right? So we're doing well. We're in that middle of that bookend.
Bob, you got about 3 minutes left here.
Yep.
I don't know if you want anything you want to wrap up. I just wanted to note Vernon earlier, in answer to your question about sessions people would like to see, had mentioned he'd like to see a change enablement session. A couple of people agreeing on that there. And so that's for your future roadmap. Otherwise, you got 3 minutes left. Or if anybody has a question, now's the time.
Yep. Jump in, chat with a question, and I guess the only closing remark that I'll make is that, our journey has been very much about use what you have. Don't be afraid to use what you have, because it creates all these opportunities for conversation. And so when you start putting this data in front of people, people start reacting to it. And you might find out sometimes your data is wrong. You might find out that the humans that are, creating the data because they're categorizing tickets incorrectly or whatever are also, part of that equation. And so, but if you don't have those conversations, it'll never get better. So use what you have. Invite people to have those conversations, see where the data leads you, and then, continuously make it better. And I think that's our advice for how anybody that's getting started ought to start where you are.
That's exactly what worked for us as well. I would second that advice.
Well, very good. So yeah, definitely, hopefully there will be, opportunities to share if there's any of that people feel like they would like to see more of or more detail about. Let us know in chat, and feel free to reach out to me individually as well. I love talking about this stuff. I could go for another hour, no problem, if it made sense, but I will cut myself off.
Thanks, Bob. It's just so nice to see all the work that you've really put in for your organization. Inspiring to, think about what we could take from your journey, and thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. Well, it's good to be here with everybody. Unless there are some closing questions or anything, I think we will call it a wrap and look forward to the next brave volunteer that's willing to kind of put their dirty laundry out there, or maybe they'll clean it a little bit more than I did mine, and share their experience as well. So thanks for being here.